So welcome to the Whitehorse Community Assets Map project. This is a multi-year project which started last fall, and it was really chosen as a way of identifying community strengths, skills, and desires before engaging in specific socially engaged art-making projects, or other projects for that matter. Unit and lesson plans include connections to all four art forms: dance, music, visual, and theater arts, each accessed through the assets mapping process. And the map itself will result in a visual arts installation with an accompanying updatable community assets map document binder. So this is a living art piece. What you see on the left is a prototype, which was really used to present the idea of the mapping process. There are different partners involved at this point: Indigo Project, Navajo Santa, and Unit1, Johnson O'Malley, and of course the U of U MATFA instructors and cohort. The demographics include Whitehorse middle and high school 7th through 12th grade students, which are ranging in age from 11 to 18 years old. All scholars except one are enrolled members of the Navajo Nation. Whitehorse has a high percentage of students who have suffered abuse and trauma, who are English language learners, and will benefit from peer-to-peer learner preference and flexible learning and community engagement opportunities. Whitehorse teachers, administration, and staff are also involved, some of whom are enrolled members of the Navajo Nation, others who are non-native. They range in age from their mid-20s to early 60s, and education levels range from high school diplomas to master's degrees. The supporting community partners include the villages of Aneth, Bluff, and Montezuma Creek, which are feeders to Whitehorse High School. And we will be starting with other children and adults in the community before charting groups as well as larger entities such as businesses, government, and non-governmental institutions. So this whole first unit, there's 7 lesson plans in this first unit, and it's all about approaches to community building. And so the first one starts with what is community and becoming co-teachers in the process. The co-teachers are the Whitehorse Student Council group. There are 24 scholars in the Student Council. And before doing this mapping, it was really important to get down to the foundation of what is community and really defining all of this for them so that they could be ambassadors for this project. So in this first plan, and again, this plan is built for an easy glance. There is a more academic, very comprehensive lesson plan that can also be looked at for details as far as core standards, any other particular details, but this can serve as a useful guide for somebody who wants to take it and just run with the activities. So the first place was to define community. That was the vocabulary, is understanding what community is, and really starting from an individual basis and giving them access, to some of the different community projects that have happened, and getting their minds thinking about, what it can look like. And so the assessment ended up with they're doing some brainstorming and listening to in their own words, their ideas of what community is, and then bringing all those thoughts together and talking about it as a group, and putting it up on the larger post-it note. And so that moved into the second lesson, which was developing awareness in self and others. A lot of it is giving the scholars some mindful practices and just building their own emotional awareness in this process. So we were really looking at vocabulary that was dealing with self-awareness, empathy, even understanding what enigmatic means. So they had an opportunity really to just start by taking a look at themselves and thinking about who they are, and then developing from there this map, and developing basically what is an empathy map. What that looks like, as you can see on the left, is where they think about a particular situation that might have made them feel good or bad or angry, and they think about that event and how did it make them think, how did it make them feel, what did they say when it happened, and what did they do when it happened. And so it's very thoughtful, that how they expressed it. And then each of these scholars took this lesson into advisories across the school. So they did this as teachers across the entire Whitehorse school community. And what you see on the right are visual empathy maps that came out of these different advisories. So this moved into the third lesson, which was really introducing asset-based community development. In this community, it's one of the poorest in the nation. It's the third largest geographic county in the entire nation, but it's also one of the poorest. It's the poorest in Utah, and it's one of the 30 poorest counties in the entire nation. And so there's always this needs-based thinking that it's occurred. Money comes through a needs-based process, and it was really about seeing if we could shift that focus to looking at the many, many strengths that exist in the community. And so that was really done by first introducing them to videos that Beth Krensky had introduced to us last semester. And this concept of doing a side-by-side comparison of needs versus assets-based thinking and mapping. When they looked at the needs map, they were really kind of discouraged and saddened because all of those things that you see on the needs map occur in this community. But then when they looked at it from an assets-based approach, they found that they felt better, they felt more peaceful, they felt more hopeful. And so they took that, looking at how they thought, or thinking about how they thought about a needs-based approach versus an assets-based approach, and then working on an idea of even developing what would their own asset-based map look like. And then we had school-wide vocabulary that was introduced this particular week. Argue, argument, concept, elaborate, and principle. And so it was really taking that vocabulary and then taking some of these other community building skills from theater, using movement, to see what they could do as far as understanding the mapping process better and also understanding how they can help build community. And so what they did is they first were looking at the idea that community mapping starts with the individual. And so their job that day was to develop their own individual asset maps so that they would understand how they could help other scholars and other people in the community develop theirs later. And so you can see on the left where they built out these triangles, and these triangles are just based on what is seen in the yay figure above. Is that the idea is that these individual asset maps were going to hang from the yay, but we have so many of them now that actually the individual strengths are going to hang from the now 2 yay figures, and these individual asset maps will be organized in rainbow bars which are protecting the yays on either side. And so you can see where they are developing those triangles, again, not just for themselves, but for the larger community. Then we were doing some different types of community building activities through 2 variations of a group juggle. We had new members that had come into the student council, and so it was working to familiarize them and bring them into the group and get them working with the idea, the concept of using a group juggle to build a community. And so there's actually videos of not only teaching the vocabulary of concept of group juggle, but also working to implement it as well. And so that's what evolved. And then the next day we did a different variation, basically building what we call a human knot or a human web. But again, with that idea that we are all connected, And then this web, unfortunately, I don't have a picture of it, but it is went out on the wall with all of the student council members represented either by a photo of themselves or some chose to use an avatar. So finally, we moved to the final activity in this unit, which was bringing all of these concepts together to think about what are principles of community building. And so there were two ways. They were reflecting back on all of the vocabulary and using a mix and match, which again is a really good type of movement, communicating type of activity. And there's a video showing what that mix and match looks like as scholars are interacting with each other. But also, finally, the culminating thoughts of what does community look like and what are the principles of community building.